More than 3,000 years ago, in the land of Egypt, the Hebrew people lived in slavery. Pharaoh, fearing they would become too numerous and powerful, ordered an unimaginable cruelty. All Hebrew male babies were to be thrown into the Nile River. It was a time of terror and despair. But a Hebrew mother named Jochebed could not allow her beautiful baby to be killed. For 3 months she hid him. When she could no longer hide him, she took a basket made of reeds, waterproofed it with tar, placed her son inside, and put it among the reeds on the bank of the Nile River. Her sister Miriam watched from a distance to see what would happen. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the river to bathe. When she saw the basket among the reeds, she sent one of her servants to fetch it. Upon opening it, she found the baby crying. Although she knew he was a Hebrew boy, her heart was filled with compassion. "This will be my son," she declared, and she named him Moses, which means drawn out of the water. Miraculously, Moses' own mother was hired as his nurse. God had turned Pharaoh's decree of death into the means of salvation. Moses grew up in the royal palace of Egypt, surrounded by luxury and privilege. He was treated like a prince, son of Pharaoh's daughter. He had the best teachers, the best food, the best clothes. He lived in the most powerful place in the ancient world. But in his heart, something reminded him that he was different. Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians. He learned mathematics, astronomy, architecture, and the art of war. He became a man powerful in words and deeds. The Egyptians considered him one of their own, a future leader of the empire. But God had other plans for him. One day, when Moses was already an adult, he went out to see his people, the Hebrews. He saw their heavy burdens, their suffering under the whip of the Egyptian taskmasters. He saw the sweat, the tears, the despair, and something inside him broke. He could no longer pretend not to see. He could no longer live in the palace while his people suffered. That day, Moses had to choose. Would he be Egyptian or Hebrew? Moses saw an Egyptian brutally beating a Hebrew. He looked one way and the other, and seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He thought no one had seen him, but the next day, when he tried to stop a fight between 2 Hebrews, one said to him, "Who made you ruler over us? Are you thinking of killing me as you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was filled with fear. Pharaoh heard about it and ordered him killed. Moses fled from Egypt and came to the land of Midian in the desert. From Prince of Egypt, he became a homeless fugitive. He walked alone through the scorching desert, leaving behind everything he knew: the palace, the power, the comfort. Now he was a man without a country, without an identity, without a future, or so he thought. In Midian, Moses defended some young women from abusive shepherds. Their father, Jethro, invited him to stay. Moses married one of his daughters, Zipporah, and became a shepherd of sheep. For 40 years he lived in the desert, tending flocks, far from the noise of the world. God was preparing him in silence. The desert would be his school, and solitude his teacher. One day, while tending the sheep on Mount Horeb, Moses saw something extraordinary: a bush that was burning with fire, but was not consumed. "This is strange," he thought. "I will go see why it is not burning." When he approached, a voice came out of the fire. "Moses! Moses!" he answered. "Here I am." And God said to him, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for you are standing on holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Moses covered his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then God continued, "I have seen the affliction of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cry because of their oppressors." Moses, full of doubts, responded, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God promised him, "I will be with you." But Moses insisted, "And if they don't believe me, what if they say God did not appear to me?" Then God asked him, "What do you have in your hand?" "A staff," Moses answered. "Throw it on the ground," God commanded him. When Moses threw it, the staff turned into a snake, and Moses fled from it. But God said to him, "Stretch out your hand and take it by the tail." Moses obeyed, and the snake turned back into a staff in his hand. "With these signs," God said, "they will believe that I appeared to you." Moses still was afraid. "Lord," he said, "I have never been a good speaker. I am slow of speech and tongue." God was a little angry, but gave him his brother Aaron as a spokesman. Finally, Moses accepted the call. He took his wife and his children, mounted his shepherd's staff, which was now the staff of God, and set out on the long journey back to Egypt. He was going to confront the most powerful man in the world. But this time, he did not go alone. God went with him. Moses and Aaron entered Pharaoh's palace, the very place where Moses had grown up as a prince. But now he came as a prophet. "Thus says the Lord, God of Israel," Moses declared, "Let my people go, that they may hold a feast to me in the desert." Pharaoh mocked him. "Who is the Lord, that I should obey his voice? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." And instead of freeing them, he increased their workload. The Hebrew people blamed Moses, but God told him, "Now you will see what I will do to Pharaoh." Then the plagues began. The water of the Nile turned to blood. Frogs invaded the land. Lice, flies, a plague on the livestock, boils, hail, locusts, and 3 days of total darkness. Each time, Pharaoh promised to let the people go, but then he hardened his heart. Egypt, the most powerful nation in the world, was humiliated by the God of the slaves. Pharaoh learned that there is a power greater than his own. God announced the final plague, the death of all the firstborn of Egypt. But he gave instructions to the Hebrews. Each family was to sacrifice a lamb and mark their doors with its blood. That night, the angel of death would pass through Egypt, but upon seeing the blood, would pass over. That night would be called Passover. The Hebrew families obeyed, ate the roasted lamb with bitter herbs and unleavened bread, dressed and ready to depart. At midnight, a great cry was heard throughout Egypt. Pharaoh called for Moses. "Get up, leave my people, go and serve the Lord." After 430 years of slavery, the Hebrew people went out free from Egypt. They were not a few, but nearly 2 million people, men, women, children, the elderly, with their flocks and their possessions. The terrified Egyptians gave them gold, silver, and clothing. God guided them with a pillar of cloud during the day and a pillar of fire during the night. It was the greatest exodus in history. But Pharaoh changed his mind. "What have we done? We have let Israel go and lost our slaves." He gathered 600 war chariots. his best troops, and pursued the Hebrews. When the people saw the Egyptian army approaching, they panicked. They were trapped. The Red Sea in front of them, the Egyptian army behind them. They cried out to Moses, "Were there no graves in Egypt, that you brought us to die in the desert?" But Moses answered, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again." Then God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." Moses raised his staff, and God sent a strong east wind that blew all night. The waters were divided, forming 2 walls of water on each side, and the bottom of the sea dried up. The Israelites crossed on dry land, with walls of water on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued them, entering the sea with their chariots and horses. But when the Israelites finished crossing, God said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." The waters returned and covered the chariots, the horsemen, and all of Pharaoh's army. Not a single one survived. That day, Israel saw the great power of God, and the people feared the Lord, and believed in him and in his servant, Moses. 3 months after leaving Egypt, they arrived at Mount Sinai. God called Moses to the top of the mountain. For 40 days and 40 nights, Moses was in the presence of God, without eating or drinking. There, God wrote the 10 Commandments with his own finger on 2 stone tablets. He also gave detailed instructions on how the people should live, worship, and relate to one another. When Moses came down from the mountain, his face shone with the glory of God, so much so that the people were afraid to approach him. For 40 years, Moses led the people through the desert. It was not easy. The people complained constantly about food, about water, about Moses' leadership. There were rebellions, idolatry, and disobedience. But God was faithful. He gave them manna from heaven every morning, water from the rock, and his constant presence in the pillar of cloud and fire. Moses interceded for the people again and again, saving them from God's wrath. He was more than a leader. He was a mediator between God and his people. Following God's instructions, the people built the tabernacle, a sacred tent where God would dwell among them. It was a beautiful place, with colorful curtains, gold, silver, and bronze. Inside was the Ark of the Covenant, which contained the tablets of the 10 Commandments. When they finished the construction, the glory of God filled the tabernacle in such a way that not even Moses could enter. God had fulfilled his promise. He dwelt in the midst of his people. Finally, after 40 years in the desert, they reached the borders of the promised land. But Moses would not enter. For a moment of disobedience, when he struck the rock instead of speaking to it, God told him he would not enter the land. Moses went up Mount Nebo, and from there God showed him all the land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, Ephraim, Manasseh, Judah, as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the valley of Jericho. This is the land I promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God told him. I am letting you see it with your eyes, but you will not cross into it. Moses died there in Moab at 120 years old. His eyes had not weakened, nor had he lost his vigor. God himself buried him, and no one knows the place of his burial to this day. The Israelites wept for Moses for 30 days. Never again did a prophet arise in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. He led a people out of slavery, gave them the law of God, and brought them to the gates of freedom. His life teaches us that God uses imperfect people to fulfill His perfect purposes. The legacy of Moses lives on forever. Subscribe and turn on notifications. See you soon.